When I returned from a business trip, the building manager blocked my entry and handed me a note from my daughter-in-law. Controlling old woman, get out of our lives. The real shock came when she found out it wasn't my son who paid the eye. Rent, I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I stood frozen in the lobby of my apartment building, the bright Florida sunlight streaming through, the glass doors behind me, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The words on the small piece of paper in my trembling hands blurred as tears welled in my eyes. Controlling old woman, stay out of our lives. The handwriting was unmistakably Yasmin's, my daughter-in-law of 3 years. The note was dated yesterday, while I was still in Chicago closing the biggest business deal of my career. Mrs. Reynolds, I'm sorry. The building manager, Tom, shifted uncomfortably. They instructed me not to let you up to their apartment, said you weren't welcome anymore. My throat tightened. Tom had known me for 5 years, ever since I'd helped Peter and Yasmin with the down payment on their luxury condo in this building. 3 floors below my own apartment. Did they say why? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Tom looked away, his discomfort evident. Just that there had been issues, and that they needed space. Issues? Space? I'd been gone for 3 weeks on business. Before I left, everything had been fine. Or so I thought. Peter had hugged me goodbye, promising to water my plants. We'd had dinner together just the night before my departure. As I rode the elevator up to my own apartment, my mind raced through every interaction I'd had with them in recent months, searching for clues. Had I said something wrong? Had I overstepped? I thought Yasmin and I had a good relationship. Sure, she was more reserved than Peter, but I'd always respected their boundaries. My phone vibrated in my purse. Peter's name flashed across the screen. With shaking hands, I answered. Peter, what's going on? Tom just gave me... Mom, I think we need some time apart. His voice was cold, distant, a tone I'd never heard from my son before. Yasmin feels suffocated by you, and honestly, so do I. The elevator doors opened to my floor, but I couldn't move. Peter, I don't understand. What happened? When did... You're always checking in, always showing up unannounced, always trying to control our lives, he continued, cutting me off. We're adults, Mom. We don't need you hovering around us all the time. Unannounced visits? I always called before coming over. Control? I'd been nothing but supportive of their decisions, even when I disagreed. Peter, is this about the dinner before I left? Did I say something to upset Yasmin? A long pause. It's everything, Mom. It's too much. We need space. Real space. My chest tightened, the pain physical and raw. I've been gone for 3 weeks, Peter. How much more space do you need? That's exactly it. You think 3 weeks is a long time. Normal mothers don't check in every day, Mom. I leaned against the elevator wall, unable to process what was happening. Peter, please, let's talk about this face to face. No, Mom. Not right now. Maybe. Maybe in a few months. Months? The words struck me like a physical blow. The truth was bubbling up inside me, a secret I'd kept for years to protect his pride. Peter, does Yasmin know I've been paying your maintenance fees? That I covered the down payment? Silence. Peter, what are you talking about? I pay our bills. The realization hit me like a tsunami. He genuinely didn't know. For 3 years, I'd been quietly transferring money into their account, making it look like the automatic deductions for their maintenance fees were smaller than they actually were. I'd wanted him to feel independent, to build his confidence. The down payment had been framed as a loan he'd been paying back in small amounts that went straight into an account I'd set up for their future. I've been helping, Peter. I didn't want you to struggle. I thought. My voice cracked. You're lying, he said flatly. "You're trying to manipulate me, just like Yasmin said you would." Yasmin said. My blood ran cold. "Don't call us, Mom. Don't." "Try to visit. We'll contact you when we're ready." The line went dead. I stumbled into my apartment, collapsed onto the sofa, and finally allowed the tears to fall freely. After everything, after all the sacrifices, all the quiet support, all the love, this was my reward? A cruel note and a colder phone call? The framed photo on my coffee table caught my eye. Peter at his college graduation, his arm around my shoulder, both of us beaming. I was 42 then, a widow of 7 years who'd worked 2 jobs to put him through school. Now, at 58, I found myself more alone than I'd ever been. What had Yasmin told him about me? And why would he believe her over his own mother? 3 days had passed since that devastating phone call with Peter. 3 days of unanswered texts, declined, calls and a hollowness in my chest that nothing could fill. I moved through my apartment like a ghost, touching the photographs that chronicled our life together. Peter's first day of school, his high school graduation, his wedding to Yasmin. I traced his face in each one, wondering how we'd arrived. Here. In the silence of my apartment, memories flooded back. Robert, my husband, had died of a sudden heart attack when Peter was just 11. The shock of becoming a widow at 34 had nearly destroyed me, but I couldn't fall apart, not when Peter needed me more than ever. I remembered the nights I'd spent at our kitchen table, bills spread out before me, calculating how to stretch, my teacher's salary to cover mortgage payments, insurance, and Peter's private school tuition. The weekends spent working retail instead of attending his soccer games. The lonely evenings when I'd sit outside his bedroom door, listening to him cry for his father, feeling utterly helpless. But we'd survived. I took night classes, earned my MBA, and slowly climbed the corporate ladder while raising my boy alone. When Peter earned a scholarship to college, I'd wept with pride. When he landed his first job at a marketing firm, I'd framed his business card. And when he met Yasmin during a work conference 5 years ago, I'd welcomed her with open arms, desperate for him to find the happiness he deserved. My phone buzzed with a text from Martha, my closest friend since college. "How are you holding? Up? Still coming for dinner tonight?" I'd forgotten all about our plans. The thought of socializing, of pretending everything was fine, felt impossible. But the alternative was another night alone with my thoughts. "I'll be there," I replied. Later that evening, sitting at Martha's dining table, I finally let the full story spill out. Martha listened intently, her forehead creasing with concern. "Evelyn, this doesn't make sense," she said, refilling my wine glass. "Peter adores you, always has. Apparently not anymore." My voice cracked. "You should have heard him, Martha. So cold, so distant, like I was a stranger." Martha reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "This has Yasmin written all over it. I never liked how she looked at you, even at their wedding." I'd noticed it too. The slight narrowing of Yasmin's eyes whenever Peter and I shared an inside joke, the way she'd interrupt when we reminisced about the past, the subtle comments about unhealthy attachments between mothers and sons. But why would Peter believe her over me? After everything we've been through? Martha sighed. "Men can be blind when it comes to manipulative partners. Remember David's wife? How she slowly turned him against his entire family? It took him years to see the truth." I stared into my wine, remembering how Yasmin had reacted when I'd given them a family heirloom for their first anniversary, my grandmother's antique clock. She'd smiled thinly, then later I'd overheard her telling Peter it was obviously a way to mark your mother's territory in our home. The clock had mysteriously broken a month later. "I just don't understand what I did wrong," I whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong," Martha said firmly. "But I'm willing to bet Yasmin's been poisoning Peter's mind against you for months, maybe years. Little comments here and there, twisting your words, your intentions. The realization dawned on me slowly. She told him I was controlling, that I was suffocating them. Martha nodded grimly. Classic isolation tactic. And now she's convinced him you're lying about the financial support. I never wanted him to know, I admitted. His father was so proud, so independent. Peter inherited that trait. I thought I was protecting his dignity. You were, Martha assured me. But Yasmin's using your silence against you now. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Yasmin whispering in Peter's ear, turning my son against me one conversation at a time. Had she been planning this all along? Was this why she'd suggested they move into the same building as me, to keep an eye on me while she worked her manipulation? Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. With trembling fingers, I logged into my bank account, scrolling. Through years of transactions, monthly transfers disguised as investment returns, the down payment classified as a business investment, maintenance fees quietly covered through an account Peter didn't even know existed. All done out of love. All done to give my son the stability and confidence I thought he needed after losing his father. I'd never wanted recognition or gratitude. I'd only wanted him to be happy. A notification popped up on my screen, an email from Peter. My heart raced as I clicked to open it, hope flaring briefly in my chest. But the message was short, cold. Mom, please stop calling and texting Yasmin. She's upset and doesn't want to talk to you. I've attached a document from our lawyer requesting that you respect our boundaries. If you continue to harass us, we'll be forced to take further action. Harass them? I hadn't contacted Yasmin once since that terrible phone call. The attached document was a formal cease and desist letter, threatening legal action if I persisted in unwanted communication. My hands shook with a mixture of shock and rage. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a calculated attack. For the first time since Robert died, I felt truly alone. My son, the boy I'd raised alone, sacrificed everything for, loved with every fiber of my being, was now a stranger weaponizing the law against me. What had Yasmin told him to make him hate me this much? And what would she do next, now that she'd successfully severed the bond between mother and son? 2 weeks after receiving the cease and desist letter, I stood outside their apartment building, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I was risking further legal action, but I couldn't accept losing my son without at least trying to understand what had happened. Tom, the building manager, spotted me immediately. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, his voice low with sympathy. "I'm not supposed to let you in." "I know, Tom. I'm not asking you to break their rules." I handed him a small envelope. "Could you just give this to Peter? It's important." Tom glanced around nervously before tucking the envelope into his pocket. "I'll make sure he gets it." Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter. No accusations, no desperate pleas, just an invitation to meet at Café Bleu, our favorite spot since Peter was in high school. Neutral ground where we could talk like adults. The next day, I arrived. At the cafe an hour early, choosing a quiet corner table away from the busy entrance. Each time the door opened, my heart leapt, hoping to see Peter's familiar face. By the time our agreed meeting time arrived, my coffee had gone cold, my hands fidgeting with napkins torn into tiny shreds. At 1:15, 15 minutes past our scheduled time, the bell above the door chimed. Peter walked in, his expression guarded. But he wasn't alone. Yasmin trailed behind him, her hand possessively clutching his arm. My stomach dropped. This wasn't the private conversation I'd hoped for. "Hello, Peter," I said, rising halfway from my seat. "Yasmin." Peter hesitated before sliding into the booth across from me. Yasmin followed, her eyes cold and calculating. "You have 15 minutes, Peter said flatly. Yasmin wanted to be here, for support. For control, I thought, but kept my expression neutral. "Thank you for coming." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I took a deep breath. "Peter, I don't understand what's happened between us. 3 weeks ago, everything seemed fine, and now I'm being treated like a stranger, like an enemy." Peter shifted uncomfortably. Yasmin placed her hand over his, her engagement ring catching the light. "You know what you did, Evelyn," Yasmin said, using my first name deliberately, a small, power move she'd begun shortly after their wedding. "I honestly don't," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "That's why I wanted to talk, to understand." Peter cleared his throat. "Mom, for years you've been smothering me, dropping by unannounced, calling constantly, trying to control every aspect of our lives. Each accusation felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Peter, I always call before visiting. Always. When have I ever dropped by unannounced?" "Last month," Yasmin interjected, "when we were having dinner with my colleagues." I frowned, trying to recall. "You mean when you invited me over to meet your new boss? That wasn't unannounced." Yasmin's eyes narrowed. "We didn't invite you. You called saying you were in the neighborhood and insisted on coming up." "That wasn't true. Peter had called me that morning, asking if I'd like to meet Yasmin's new boss." I looked at my son, waiting for him to correct her, but he was staring down at the table. "Peter," I said softly, "that's not what happened." Yasmin squeezed Peter's hand. "See? She's gaslighting you, just like I said she would." My throat tightened. "I'm not gaslighting anyone. Peter, you called me that morning. You invited me." Peter shook his head. "Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I felt like I was drowning, struggling, to find solid ground in a conversation where reality itself seemed to be shifting. "I would never lie to you," I whispered. "Like you didn't lie about paying our maintenance fees?" Peter said, his voice suddenly sharp. "About controlling our finances behind my back?" So he'd checked. My heart sank. "I wasn't controlling anything, Peter. I was helping. I never wanted you to feel indebted," Yasmin cut in. "Dependent? That's exactly what you wanted. To keep Peter reliant on you forever." "That's not true," I said, my voice breaking. "After your father died, we struggled so much. I never wanted you to experience that kind of financial stress." Peter's expression remained stony. "You should have been honest." "You're right," I admitted. "I should have. But I was trying to protect your pride. Your father was the same way. He hated accepting help even when we needed it." At the mention of Robert, something flickered in Peter's eyes. A brief softening, a flash of the son I knew. But then Yasmin shifted beside him, and the moment vanished. "We have news," Yasmin announced abruptly. "I wasn't going to tell you, but since we're here." She placed her hand on her stomach, a smug smile spreading across her face. "I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." The news should have been joyous. Instead, it felt like a weapon, another way to manipulate the situation. Still, I forced a smile. "That's wonderful news. Congratulations to you both." Peter seemed surprised by my calm reaction. I could see the conflict in his eyes, as if part of him had expected, perhaps even wanted, me to react poorly. "The doctor says I need to avoid stress," Yasmin continued. "That's why we need space from complicated relationships." I understood then. The pregnancy wasn't just news, it was an ultimatum. Stay away, or risk being branded as the villain who endangered their unborn child. "I understand," I said quietly, even as my heart shattered. I would never want to cause any stress during such an important time. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small box. This was meant to be an olive branch. Now I suppose it can be a congratulations gift. Inside was a silver picture frame with Peter's ultrasound photo from when I was pregnant with him. It had been one of Robert's most treasured possessions. "Your father kept this on his desk until the day he died," I said. my voice barely above. A whisper. Peter stared at the frame, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. For just a moment, I saw my son again. Not the cold stranger sitting across from me, but my beautiful boy. Then Yasmin spoke. "We should go. Your 15 minutes are up." After that disastrous meeting, I fell into a depression unlike anything I'd experienced since Robert's death. I stopped going to social events, barely managed to focus at work, and spent evenings staring at old photo albums, trying to understand how my relationship with my son had unraveled so completely. Martha became my lifeline, checking in daily and finally insisting I join her for dinner one evening. "You can't keep isolating yourself, Evelyn," she said, setting a plate of lasagna in front of me. "You're giving Yasmin exactly what she wants." "What else can I do?" I asked, pushing the food around my plate. "She's pregnant. She's using that to keep him away from me." Martha sat across from me, her expression serious. "Evelyn, there's something you should know. I didn't want to tell you this before because I wasn't sure, but now I'm convinced." My fork stilled. "What is it?" My niece Rebecca was in a book club with Yasmin's former roommate from college. Apparently, Yasmin has a history of this exact behavior. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She did the same thing with her last serious boyfriend before Peter. Gradually isolated him from his family, especially his mother, by twisting events and inventing slights. According to the roommate, Yasmin has serious issues with mother figures." Cold feelings settled in my stomach. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Martha sighed. "It was secondhand gossip. I didn't want to create problems between you and your daughter-in-law based on rumors. But after what's happened..." She reached for my hand. "I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry." The information was like a missing puzzle piece, making the entire picture suddenly clear. "I need to talk to Peter alone, show him evidence of what she's doing." "She'll never allow that," Martha pointed out. I straightened my shoulders. "Then I'll have to find another way." Over the next few days, I devised a plan. Peter had mentioned in passing months ago that he sometimes worked at Café Bleu on Wednesdays when Yasmin had her prenatal appointments. It was a long shot, but I had to try. The following Wednesday, I entered the cafe at 10 a.m., scanning the room without being obvious. My heart jumped when I spotted him in the far corner, laptop open, headphones on. I ordered a coffee and casually made my way toward him. When he looked up and saw me, his expression shifted from shock to wariness. He removed his headphones. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I come here on Wednesdays," I lied, sitting down before he could object. "I was surprised to see you." He glanced at his watch. "Yasmin will be done with her appointment in an hour. Then we have time to talk." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "Peter, before you say anything, please just look at these. If this is about the maintenance fees again, it's not about money," I interrupted gently. "It's about truth." Inside the folder were bank statements showing the recurring payments to their apartment, emails from Yasmin to the building management, specifically requesting that I be barred from the building dated 2 days before I returned from Chicago, and printouts of text messages between Peter and me that directly contradicted Yasmin's version of events. "How did you get these?" he asked, frowning at Yasmin's emails. Tom felt terrible about what happened. He knows we've always been close. Peter flipped through the documents slowly, his frown deepening. When he reached the text messages about the dinner with Yasmin's boss, messages clearly showing he had invited me, he paused, rereading them several times. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "Yasmin said..." "I know what she said," I replied softly. "And I know you believed her. But Peter, I would never lie to you." He looked up at me, and I could see confusion and doubt battling in his eyes. "Why would she make this up?" "I think she wants to control your relationships, to isolate you." I hesitated before continuing. Martha's niece knows Yasmin's old roommate. Apparently, she did this before, with her ex. Peter's face hardened. So, you've been investigating my wife? No, Peter. The information came to me, not the other way around. I took a deep breath. I'm just trying to understand why my son suddenly hates me. I don't hate you, he said quietly. Then, why did you send me a cease and desist letter? Why did you let Yasmin ban me from your home? Why did you believe every negative thing she said about me without even asking for my side? He had no answer, just continued staring at the documents spread before him. Do you know what hurts the most? I continued, my voice wavering. That you could so easily believe I would try to control or manipulate you after everything we've been through together. After all these years. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of my son in them. Not the cold, defensive stranger Yasmin had molded, but the boy who once climbed into my bed during thunderstorms. The teenager who brought me flowers on Mother's Day. The young man who hugged me fiercely at his college graduation and whispered, "We did it, Mom." I don't know what to think anymore, he admitted. These documents, they don't match what Yasmin told me. No, they don't, I agreed, because she wasn't telling the truth. Peter's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced down at it, and I saw Yasmin's name on the screen. The brief connection between us evaporated as anxiety crossed his features. She's done with her appointment early, he said, gathering his things hastily. I need to go. Peter, please. Think about what you've seen today. He stuffed the documents back into the folder, hesitating before handing it back to me. I can't take these home. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. We both knew what would happen if Yasmin found evidence contradicting her narrative. Keep them, I said. Or destroy them if you need to. I have copies. Peter nodded, slipping the folder into his messenger bag. I need time to process this. I understand. I reached out tentatively, touching his arm. I love you, Peter. Nothing will ever change that. He didn't pull away from my touch, which felt like a small victory. I'll call you, he said, not meeting my eyes. As I watched him hurry out of the cafe, I felt a mixture of hope and dread. I'd planted seeds of doubt, shown him evidence that Yasmin had been manipulating the truth. But would it be enough to break through the walls she'd built around him? And even if he did see through her lies, what would happen when she realized she was losing control? How far would Yasmin go to keep her grip on my son? 3 days passed without a word from Peter. I checked my phone obsessively, jumping at every notification. But the call I was waiting for never came. On the 4th morning, I was preparing for work when my doorbell rang. My heart leapt to my throat. Could it be Peter? Instead, I found Yasmin standing in my hallway, her face contorted with barely contained rage. You just couldn't help yourself. Could you? She hissed, pushing past me into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door slowly, steeling myself. Good morning, Yasmin. She spun around, her designer handbag swinging wildly from her arm. Don't act innocent. I know you ambushed Peter at the cafe. I know about your little folder of evidence. She made air quotes with her fingers, her voice dripping with contempt. It wasn't an ambush, I said calmly, and everything in that folder was true. You're pathetic, she spat. A lonely old woman who can't let go of her son. It's sick, you know that. The way you've manipulated him his entire life. I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited. I think you're projecting, Yasmin. You're describing your own behavior. Her eyes narrowed. You think you're so clever. Peter told me everything. How you've been secretly paying our maintenance fees, trying to make us financially dependent on you. I was helping him, not controlling him. Please, she scoffed. You've been smothering him since his father died. He never had a chance to become his own person because you were always there, hovering, making him feel guilty if he didn't put you first. The unfairness of her accusation stung like a physical slap. I worked 2 jobs so he could stay in his school after his father died. I postponed my own grief to make sure he was okay. Every decision I made was for his well-being, not mine. And you've been reminding him of those sacrifices ever since, haven't you? Poor Evelyn, the martyr mother. Her voice rose mockingly. Always making sure Peter knew how much you gave up for him, so he'd feel too guilty to ever put anyone else first. I shook my head, bewildered by the twisted version of our relationship she'd created. That's not true. I never— Save it, she interrupted. I know your type. My mother was the same way. Always the victim, always the saint. It took me years to break free from her manipulation. Suddenly, pieces fell into place. This wasn't really about me at all. Yasmin was fighting ghosts from her own past, projecting her mother's behavior onto me. Yasmin, I said gently, I'm not your mother. Something flickered in her eyes, vulnerability perhaps, but it was quickly replaced by renewed anger. Stay away from us, from my baby. You've lost Evelyn. Peter believes me, not you. Does he? I asked quietly. Is that why you're here? Threatening me? Because you're so confident in your control over him? Her face hardened. He's coming to pick me up in 20 minutes. When he finds out I came here, that you upset me in my condition— She placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. It will be the final nail in your coffin. A wave of sadness washed over me. Not for myself, but for Peter and the Giur child that would be born into this web of manipulation. What do you want from me, Yasmin? To disappear from my son's life completely? That would be a start, she said coldly. I moved to my desk and pulled out my checkbook. Would money help? Is that what this is about? Her eyes glittered with interest, though she tried to hide it. You think you can buy your way back into our lives? No, I said honestly. I think I'm finally seeing clearly what you want. It was never about boundaries or feeling suffocated. It was about isolating Peter and securing financial control. You don't know anything about me, she snarled, but her eyes remained fixed on the checkbook in my hand. I know enough. I wrote out a check for $50,000, a significant sum, but one I could afford. I held it out to her. Take it. Consider it a parting gift. Yasmin hesitated, clearly torn between her greed and her desire to maintain the moral high ground. What's the catch? No catch. Take the money. Do whatever you want with it. I won't. Contact Peter again unless he reaches out to me first. Her hand darted out, snatching the check before she could reconsider. She studied it, making sure it was real, then tucked it into her purse. Smart decision, she said, her voice suddenly businesslike. I'll tell Peter you've agreed to respect our boundaries. I'm sure you'll tell him whatever serves your narrative. Yasmin moved toward the door, then turned back, a smug smile playing on her lips. It must be killing you, knowing I won. Knowing your precious son chose me over you. I didn't respond, which seemed to irritate her more than any retort could have. She wanted a scene, a confrontation she could report back to Peter as evidence of my instability. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Goodbye, Yasmin, I said simply, holding the door open for her. After she left, I sank onto my sofa, emotionally drained. Had I just made a terrible mistake? $50,000 was a lot of money, but it wasn't really about the money. It was about calling her bluff, seeing what she would do when offered a choice between maintaining her righteous indignation and taking a payoff. She'd chosen the money without hesitation, and that revealed everything about her true motives. I picked up my phone and dialed Martha's number. She took the bait, I said when she answered. You were right, Martha replied. She came straight to you the moment Peter started questioning her story, and she took the check. just like you predicted. Did you do what we discussed? I smiled grimly. Yes. It's all on video, including her admission that she went behind Peter's back to confront me. The security cameras in my apartment had captured everything. Yasmin's uninvited entry, her threats, her eagerness to take the check. Most importantly, they'd captured her admission that Peter didn't know she was there. What now? Martha asked. I sighed, looking at the framed photo of Peter and me that still held pride of place on my coffee table. Now we wait. She'll either cash the check, proving this was always about money, or she'll destroy it and double down on her lies. And if she cashes it, then I'll have proof of her real motives. Bank records don't lie. I paused. But it's still up to Peter to see the truth. I can't force him. As I hung up, I felt strangely calm. I'd done all I could. The rest was in my son's hands. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. Summer fading to autumn, then winter, the holidays approaching with their bittersweet memories of family gatherings that would not happen this year. I threw myself into work, took a painting class I'd always been too busy for, even started volunteering at a local literacy program. Life continued, though the Peter-shaped hole in my heart remained unfilled. The check had been cashed within days of my confrontation with Yasmin. I'd forwarded the bank notification to Martha with a sad emoji, but hadn't done anything else with the information. What was the point? If Peter had chosen to believe Yasmin's version of events, nothing I could say or prove would change his mind. I was setting up my Christmas tree, a smaller one than usual, but I couldn't bear to skip the tradition entirely when my doorbell rang. Probably the delivery person with the new ornaments I'd ordered, I thought, brushing pine needles from my sweater as I went to answer. I froze when I opened the door. Peter stood in the hallway, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, shoulders hunched against the December chill. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice rough with emotion. My heart thundered in my chest. Peter. We stared at each other for a long moment, neither sure what to say next. He looked thinner, tired, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "Can I come in?" he finally asked. I stepped aside wordlessly, afraid to hope, afraid to speak, lest I break whatever fragile thing had brought him to my door. He entered slowly, taking in the half-decorated tree, the boxes of ornaments spread across, the floor, the holiday music playing softly in the background. Without a word, he picked up the silver star topper, the one his father had bought our first Christmas together, and turned it over in his hands. "You kept it," he murmured. "Of course I did," I replied. "It's our tradition." Peter set the star down carefully and turned to face me. "I've made a terrible mistake, Mom." The words hung in the air between us, precious and terrifying. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked, not ready yet to address the enormity of his statement. "I just made a fresh pot." He nodded, following me to the kitchen where we'd shared countless meals, homework sessions, late-night talks throughout his childhood. I poured 2 mugs, added cream to his just the way he liked, and set them on the table. "Yasmin and I separated 2 months ago," he said abruptly. "The divorce will be finalized after the baby is born." I sat down across from him, absorbing the news. "I'm sorry, Peter." "Are you?" He looked up, searching my face. "After everything she did to you?" "I'm sorry you're hurting," I clarified. "And I'm sorry about the baby." He nodded, staring into his coffee. "She's agreed to joint custody. It's a girl." Despite everything, I felt a flicker of joy at the thought of a granddaughter. "That's wonderful." "I found the check, Mom." His voice was quiet but steady. "In Yasmin's purse. I was looking for a receipt and found her bank statement. $50,000, deposited the same day she told me she'd gone to make peace with you." I said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "When I confronted her, she claimed it was a bribe, that you were trying to buy her silence about something, but it didn't make sense." He looked up, his eyes filled with shame. So I checked our building's security footage from that day. Saw her coming to your apartment. Then I called my bank. And? I prompted gently. And I learned you've been paying our maintenance fees all along, just like you said. He swallowed hard. I also found emails on her computer, to her friends, about how she'd finally gotten the controlling mother-in-law out of the picture. His voice broke. About how she'd convinced me you were manipulating me, when all along. All along it was her, I finished softly. Peter nodded, tears filling his eyes. How could I have been so blind? How could I have believed her lies about you? After everything we've been through together? I reached across the table and took his hand in mine. She was very convincing, Peter, and you loved her. We tend to believe the people we love. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he whispered. You have it anyway, I said simply. He broke down then, tears streaming down his face as months of guilt and confusion poured out. I moved to his side of the table and held him like I used to when he was a little boy with skinned knees or a broken heart. We stayed that way for a long time, the coffee growing cold, the Christmas music playing softly in the background. Finally, Peter straightened, wiping his eyes. I've missed you so much, Mom. These past months have been. He shook his head, unable to find the words. I know, I soothed. I've missed you too. Can we start over? He asked hesitantly. Can we rebuild what we had? I smiled, feeling hope bloom in my chest for the first time in months. We never lost it, Peter. It was just waiting for you to find your way back. Together, we returned to the living room and continued decorating the tree, falling into the easy rhythm we'd established over years of shared holidays. As Peter reached up to place the silver star on top, I saw Robert in him. The same profile, the same careful hands, and felt a surge of gratitude so strong it nearly overwhelmed me. This wasn't the happy ending I'd imagined 6 months ago. Peter was wounded, going through a divorce, about to become a single father. There would be complications with Yasmin, custody arrangements, co-parenting tensions. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we would face it together, as we had faced everything since Robert died, with honesty, with love, with the unbreakable bond between mother and son that even the most calculated manipulation couldn't permanently sever. 3 months later, I stood in the hospital room, watching as Peter cradled his newborn daughter in his arms. Despite everything, Yasmin had allowed me to be present for the birth, a small gesture of peace in what had been a bitter divorce process. Would you like to hold her? Peter asked, carefully transferring the tiny bundle into my arms. I gazed. Down at my granddaughter, with her perfect rosebud mouth and wisps of dark hair. She's beautiful, I whispered. We're naming her Rose, Peter said. Rose Evelyn Holloway. Tears filled my eyes as I looked up at my son. You don't have to do that. I want to, he said firmly. I want her to be named after the strongest, most loving woman I know. From her hospital bed, Yasmin watched us with a complex expression, part resignation, part lingering resentment, part grudging respect. Our relationship would never be warm, but for Rose's sake, we had reached a tentative truce. As I held my granddaughter, I thought of all the lessons I would share with her someday. Not just the practical skills I'd taught Peter, how to tie shoelaces, and bake cookies and balance a checkbook, but the deeper wisdom life had taught me, that love doesn't demand recognition. That forgiveness is a gift you give yourself as much as others. That family bonds, when true, can bend almost to breaking, but still find their way back to strength. Most importantly, that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in forcing others to acknowledge your truth, but in living it quietly, steadfastly, until the light of that truth becomes impossible to ignore. Rose yawned and nestled closer in my arms, her tiny hand gripping my finger with surprising strength. In that perfect moment, with my son beside me and his daughter in my arms, I knew that the silent legacy I would leave behind wasn't money or property or even my name. It was love, steadfast, patient, and unshakable, that would echo through generations long after I was gone.